Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here with us today. I'll be your moderator, and it's a big thrill for me being here on the Wolf Summit and talking now to Mike Shafei and Rosa Shafranek. We'll be here mainly talking about the topic of diversity and trying to gather some insights on how HR managers and entrepreneurs can actually manage that in a better way for the companies, for the startups. Without too much to add, I would like to invite you for a round of applause to Mike Shafei and Rosa Shafranek. So, guys, let me start with the first question. Yeah, would you mind, Rosa, would you mind sharing with us a bit more about HR hints in the context of diversity and inclusion?
Yeah, sure. The first thing, like maybe before I start, it's like super nice to be here with you, and it's a pleasure to discuss all the business things and HR things as well. But just to give you like a whole background, like what we are doing and with what I'm coming to Wolf Summit this year. HR Hints is the HR boutique. Which is like dedicated and specially made, specially done and led by me, conducted directly to startups and fast-growing tech companies. So basically, we are doing three things. We are doing people and culture. So all the things regarding people development, growth, like especially when company is like pretty new and it's like having, I don't know, 5 people, 10 people, 15 people, but it's not enough to have like HR generalist on payroll, like full-time person, but already is having some struggles on conflicts, on relations, on people development, on people growth. So that's where we come in, like as an HR on-demand experts. So we are giving someone, one expert, one dedicated person who knows the startup and who knows what kind of problems they have. And it's like much easier to ask that expert much better than like, I know, neighbor, other funder or a friend, right? Second thing we do, it's like talent. So it's like especially thing for a diversity discussion and like talent, hiring people, building teams. So it's like a basic thing in startups, especially in like fast scaling startups. So it's like super crucial thing for us to match people with startup, to match and choose the best candidates, not the best on the market, but the best fitted, the best suit. So that's the point of our work. And the third thing we do is operations. So all the background, what we need from the document points of view, or from the back office, so payroll, administration, all the stuff like behind the scenes, which is like super needed for, you know, avoiding funders going to prison, as our head of operations is laughing all the time. So basically, that's what we are doing. And when it comes to diversity and inclusion, especially, we are usually the first company which is dedicated to building the team when funders say like, okay, enough is enough. We hired friends, we hired people who are interested in us and observing us like from scratch when we are on the market. And now it's time to go professionally, it's time to standardize the process, it's time to universalize the process, going global, for example, find a talent and like, you know, find a specially dedicated professional help in HR. So that's the place where we are coming in. And usually what we see in startups, it's like, you know, 15 copies or 20 copies or 10 copies of the funders. So like, on one hand, it's like totally understandable. And I think like we will be talking about it, like why people do that, why we hire people who are similar to us or the same as we are as funders. That's much easier. Maybe I will collaborate on it later, but it is like a normal thing we do as funders, but there are many negative consequences of that. So that's what we are doing. It's like building this awareness and heads up, like regarding what kind of people you are missing right now. Why you are having all the same people in all the same age, all the same color, all this based in one country, having the same background, you know, liking the same things and having the same preferences. So that's the easy way to build a startup, and that's much more nice for founder, but that's also a huge trap.
All right, thank you. Michael, I think okay, you get your mic there.
Yeah, thanks.
So can you share more from your side? How is it being a CEO of such a great event? And regarding that same question, which I made to Roger. Yeah?
Yeah, so thanks for the great introduction, Roger, and thank you, Edesio. So, you know, the short and simple answer of being a CEO of an events business for the last 3 years is not an awful lot of fun. I mean, now don't take me the wrong way there. It's been hugely rewarding in hindsight, but you know, if you asked me, okay, turn the clock back 3 years and then to see what was in front of us, you know, I'd probably be in the south of Spain working in a bar somewhere. So yeah, it's been an enormously challenging but rewarding time for the past 3 years. So a little bit about myself. Prior to getting into the venture capital industry, I was telling you earlier, Edesio, so I spent a decade in the oil and gas industry. So I was a saturation diver, and what that entailed was going down to the seabed in various jurisdictions in the world to install new infrastructure, pipelines, make inspections of, offshore jacket platforms, etc. So, in some ways it was the perfect background for what was going to come when myself and Martin Ring, when we acquired the Wolf Summit. So Wolf Summit, I mean, I'm sure many of you have been to multiple editions and that some of you certainly are here for the first time. So for the new people, the business was, the event was founded in Gdynia initially in 2015 by Piotr Basha and Marek Piasek. So that's a husband and wife plus brother, SME at the time. So they did a fantastic job building the event from 200 people in Gdynia, swelling it to 2,500 attendees every March and October, taking place at the in Warsaw, the Palace of Culture and Science. So when myself and Martin acquired the event in 2019, actually July, it was just 3 months away from our first edition as the new management. So bearing in mind, I'd gone from oil and gas industry, living inside a giant Coke can for 30 days at a time with 8 other not particularly nice men, to organising an event for 2,500 people. It was, this was even before COVID. It was an absolute baptism of fire. But we got the first event done in October 2019, somehow it went spectacularly well. There was no hiccups, and we came through it. And I was like, okay, that was challenging, but I've got the taste for it now. So, we started preparations for the March 2020 event. Ticket sales were 40% up year on year. Huge demand. The whole tech space was generally booming. There was a lot of money in venture capital. And then, as we all know, February, March of 2020, disaster struck. And it was like, okay, let's look for a virtual events platform. So we landed on Hopin, just 8 days away from the event. Had a very thorough and quick onboarding process. These were the days when Johnny and we would communicate on WhatsApp. So I'd literally ping him. A couple of minutes later, we'd be on the phone for an hour or two. Nowadays it's hard to get past his executive assistant. So we pulled off the event in really, high production value. Johnny came to me after the event. He said, look, Mike, that was spectacular, how you turned the event around in such a short amount of time. Would you like to start servicing some of our clients who are coming to us looking for us to support them? So off the back of our March edition, we started working with the likes of UNIDO, Vienna Energy Forum, Panasonic, PwC, the list goes on. So it's obviously it's never, COVID was an absolute tragedy for, globally. So you can never look at it in a positive light. But in terms of our business model, we actually managed to branch out into new, create new revenue streams and new business lines off the back of it, which has allowed us to, reach where we are today, putting on I'm sure from everybody's perspectives, a hugely impressive event with high production value, great speakers and content. So, it's been, again, I'd much rather be on, as a barman in the south of Spain, if you asked me, now, 3 years ago, but being where we are right now, I couldn't be happier, and it's been enormously rewarding.
God, I'm happy you didn't become a barman in the south of Spain. So,
or maybe Fortaleza, Recife.
Never know. So, when I think about the title, of what you're talking here in this panel, it's why should CEOs stop hiring people who are like them? And I had a very interesting conversation during the last break. We're not actually talking about being different in terms of ethnical origins or gender. It's rather something which relates to diversity of thought. And I think that's extremely healthy. Yeah, and both of you succeeded amazingly to drive your businesses with that kind of mentality. Would you mind telling me, I guess the answer, right, to why should CEOs stop hiring people who are like them?
I can maybe start. I can answer in a long way and in a short way. Just to answer it in a short way, just to raise the effectiveness. It's like the easy and the shortest answer I can give to such question. And there's not only about data. There's a lot of data showing that the effectiveness of teams and companies which are different from each others, but also varied internally, are much higher. And that's basically because of the fact that we are not able to see all over what's going around. Different positions, different status. As you said, of course, diversity, it is about gender, it's about color, about religion, about ethnics, of course. But it is also about the stage in your life. It is about your marital status. It is about your origin, your type of thinking. If you are super challenger, for example, and you want to work for 14 hours a day, or you are just having 9-to-5 mindset, and you need both people in a company. That type of thinking, that in startup we need only people who are working, 15 hours a day. We are having a lot of people with such mindset, and now they are burned out after 2 years of uncontrolled working like crazies. And of course, I'm a founder, and I think we share this experience that we work quite a lot. If you are founder, that's the way sometimes. But you need to keep this balance, and you are not able to do that on your own only. So if you hire people different than you, and you are doing it with your highest awareness, this is the only way to hear from these people in your company. Look at this problem. Look at the customer from a different perspective. Maybe there's something you don't see. And my experiences are totally like that. I've hired the first person who was the people and culture consultant, so the people and culture partner, as we call that role in HR Hints. I think it's very hard to find person who is more different than I am. Like I was the first one. I was doing it like as a freelancer. After that, we started a company together with my co-founder. But the first person who joined us as a people and culture partner was like totally different than I am. And currently, we are like having that type of check-in that if I'm making any decision, if I'm making any changes or I'm implementing something, I like really ask and I'm really interested in Marcin's feedback. That's super important. And it's sometimes difficult. Like, of course, like you prefer people say like, oh yeah, it's so good. Like, what a great decision, what a great point of view, right? As a founder, you're having a lot of stress. And sometimes like, you know, the horizon of problems are not ending. And that's the moment when you would prefer maybe to hear like, oh yeah, it was so good what you've done. But after that, you are saying, okay, so yeah, I'm doing well, and you stop to grow. And it's much better to take this difficult way. So to hear like, okay, maybe you did it quite well, but you could improve. You didn't say about that and that. You didn't see this and this. Like, that's super important. And that it's, as I said, it's sometimes difficult, but it's worth it totally. And when I was making a decision of hiring like the manager of the talent team at my company, I've also chosen the person who, of course, like accept the fact that she's having like amazing talent knowledge. She's completely different than I am. So she's having different energy. She's in a different age, different like, you know, life stage. She needs different things. She completely differently thinks about the talent management and the team management. And it's not comfortable for me. And yeah, we are having a lot of time spent to discuss, to understand each other, but it's totally worth it. And like, I know that the talent team, who was led by me previously, and now she's taking over it, they would benefit from it, definitely.
All right. And Mike, what would you have to say in that matter?
Yeah, so I agree with Roger that it's very much so important to have a number of opposite characters to your own. So I'm probably the most nauseatingly optimistic person in the company. So it's good to have like a sprinkle of pessimism and, you know, sometimes realism into the mix because, you know, it's, I mean, I'm already planning Wolf Summit Pluto edition. So, you know, I have a team that's around me and they often point out, okay, Mike, let's like step back and let's approach things step by step, which for me is very difficult. But the biggest challenge I had was to realize that, you know, things, the way that you work in the company and your own character profile. So, you know, I've done a number of psychometric tests and a number of the team have, and I come out as ENTP, so you're probably familiar with that. So the trick is to understand that it's not a, it's not a disadvantage, you know, when you're not, okay, so my attention to detail is not the best, and no shouts from the crowd from the team. So, you know, my attention to detail is somewhat lacking. So there's members in the team who really have Hawkeye, you know, borderline OCD personalities, and they pick up on, you know, everything that I may have overlooked. So I would, you know, maybe 2 years ago or even more recently, I may have, you know, criticized, you know, looked at myself negatively because I didn't have that, you know, character set. But now I've realized that it's actually, you know, it's of more benefit to excel in where you're strong, you know, in your strengths and advantages. And then you complement the team. Your team should be complementary to each other, and everybody should intermix and match according to their different strengths and characteristics.
All right.
And that's often the mistake which people make when they hire team. And I'm sure like you've already heard about culture fit, like during the recruitment process. And usually it can be behind like a culture fit frame, unconscious bias can be hidden. So like that type of thinking, as you say, like if I am having some characteristics and I know about them, and I'm looking exactly for the same people having the same characteristics, and I can make that mistake that I think it's like a culture fit. It's not like a culture fit. It's like hiring copies. Like people should have the same values for the company, like, you know, having the same goals, but be different. That's the thing. Like, that's why we are also like, when usually we are like the first company, as I said, which is hiring for startup. And that's the thing we explained very clearly at the beginning. So like, don't mismatch and don't misunderstand the culture fit, because culture added value. So what else you can bring to the team? What else you are missing and you are even don't aware of that. You are not aware of that. So that's the thing to define.
And if I can ask, how much, you know, credibility do you place on psychometric tests and the Myers-Briggs system?
Usually we are using it, like it really depends on the recruitment we are leading, and we use MBTI, of course, like Myers-Briggs. We are sometimes using DISC. We are sometimes using Insights. So like that, these three are the most common when it comes to the recruitment, but we never use it like a final diagnosis. It's rather like, you know, maybe 10% of our, like, giving the color to what we see, giving the additional knowledge, but never, you know, like judging only on tests. Because like, it is like very, very easy to, you know, go with, like to treat the effect of the test as a final decision. And we must remember these all tests we are talking about are based on like behaviorals, which are timely changeable. So like, because like I'm having psychological background and I've like spent 10 years on like firstly at the master's degree and after PhD studies, and like business just to use correctly, like the test, it's like much more to have that, okay, like let's check one little thing, not to judge fully, you know, just on the test. That's our approach.
Okay, really interesting. And it's just, you know, something that I feel, and I'm certain that it's an advantage to this day, because I spent so long working in an environment, you know, so I would join a vessel with 150 to 200 other predominantly men. Very few projects did I go on where there was any, you know, females on the vessel. So we would go off into the Blue Yonder for 3 to 4 months in the South China Sea, you know, the Arabian Gulf, etc. And, you know, you really learn how important it is to have a, you know, to have a type of culture, especially with like big characters. I've worked with everybody from foreign legionnaires to Navy SEALs, you know, each of them on the spectrum of, you know, how much mental trauma they've been through. And one thing that I noticed quickly was that when you had a good harmony amongst the team, everything would fall into place. Sometimes all it takes is one bad apple in the crew or in the team, and it can literally like destroy the whole culture of the team or the company or the group. So you know, one thing I've taken on board as a leader is to really look out for that in like the, you know, and try and nip it in the bud early if I see any, you know, negative circumstances or behaviours.
And did you have like this experience that, for example, due to the fact that you were like quite close, not only co-workers, but society, as I understand as well. Like, did you have such cases that, for example, someone was performing well, so from professional side, it was like all good, but from character or like behavior or like, you know, personal things, someone was fired, for example?
Yeah, very much so. Actually, it's quite true, because a lot of the time, I'm talking about now in my background in oil and gas, some of the, you know, the best performing divers that I worked with, you know, exceptionally good at their job, technically strong, but absolute character, you know, the emotional capacity of a, you know, of a 5-year-old. And it was as good as they were to, you know, in terms of their professional skills, they were just impossible to work with.
There's a great book which is called The No Asshole Rule from a professor on Stanford. And that's absolutely the point, right? I'm coming from a different kind of background than you both. Yeah, you know that I have been working in a few corporations for quite some time. I worked for Hewlett Packard, for IBM, for Credit Suisse, for DXC Technology, UI. I do not work for 3M. A disclaimer. Yes, like I'll be joining sooner. But and here's the thing: in all that corporations. There is a way to tackle the topic of diversity and inclusion, which is based on corporate settings, yeah, which are the companies are really willing to invest and support in employees which are from LGBT plus or have disabilities, or from different religious groups, to support people, to encourage people from different ethnic backgrounds, and people from all sorts of diverse backgrounds to get together to work and get the things done. But I think it's like it's to the point. It's about the chemistry between the teams and how they work together, right?
Like, especially when it comes to like building a team, and these teams are winning, which understand that like really understanding each other and cooperation is the clue. Like, regarding to what you said, like it's very also common in startups and hiring for tech companies that funders or hiring managers are expecting for stars. So like that's usually like maybe 40% of our first conversations with funders. Like, find me a star who will lead this company or take this company to the moon. And like we are basically asking two questions, like, are you a star to have a star? Like, why are you the best company to hire, to have a star on board? And the second thing, like, you are not able to build a company on stars. Like, you know, like it's much more on onboarding, like understanding the context and like the building the rituals of sharing knowledge, of exchanging knowledge. Like that's the clue, that's the difficulty. And like there are a lot of research about that companies are having the knowledge for which they are paying external companies to get. So like more than 70% of money spent, for example, to learn something new, like, you know, communications, solving conflicts. This knowledge is already in the company, but there are so hugely built silos, and the communication between departments, it's so weak, and the team spirit is so weak that it's pretty hard to benefit from it.
Right. And it's a great thing to hear from you guys about your practical experience, right, in that terms. But I was going to ask about real life experiences, but since we started already to delve into that, maybe Rujo, could expand a bit on something that we have been talking a little bit before the panel, right? We have been talking about quotas inside companies, right? So that can you share here with us a little bit more about that?
Like, especially like when it comes to building the companies, and like when we are talking about like what are the most common behaviors we are meeting, like maybe it's worth to we also discuss the reason for that and the background for that. Like we are saying, okay, it's much easier to hire with people who are similar to us, but we are having so many stress as funders, as managers, especially like all the data after pandemic started shows that line managers and mid-level managers are the most stressed people, and they burned out a lot earlier, like earlier and much faster than others, because they are like having push from the up, so from C-level management board, and from down, so from people who are tired, exhausted, and who are stuck in their homes. And it's like much easier when you are a line manager or a founder. It's much easier to hire the person who is like very similar to you, because of the fact that not from our culture point of view, but from our neuroscientific point of view, neuroscience point of view, and psychological point of view, we are using scripts and stereotypes to make our life easier. So like you've maybe noticed that already, that if you are like in a city which is like similar to the city you were grown up, or like the city which is like, are arranged in a similar way, already, you like it more. If something is like similar to what you like it more. That's like whole and advertisement business is built on. So like it's like absolutely normal to prefer people who are like us. It's nothing like bad about it, but we should work on this awareness to avoid it, because like as we say about like insights from the company, like we, for example, we are having a lot of HR audits as well, and like after companies having like a huge personal problems, like the first thing we are asking, like, okay, you are having a lot of inside experience, you are having a lot of advisors, you are having a lot of knowledge inside your company. Why you haven't, like, what do you think? Why you haven't seen it yet before we joined, before we were onboarded? And they really answer like, we didn't see that.
I think there's a big role for empathy here, right? So I think it's truly remarkable to think, for example, Mike, in your case, right, that we got the Wolf Summit happening, and it's edition 15, right? And it's been a long way. I keep thinking while you guys are talking about one example which I got from Eric Quint. He's a former chief design officer at 3M, and got an amazing book which is about design leadership. And what he advocates is actually that, because I have been in my previous life a UX designer, and one thing that Eric is saying is like once a designer, always a designer. So I tend to look at things from the point of view of product development, right? You develop relationships, you develop services, you develop the breakfast that you're doing for your kids, for God's sake. And if you talk in terms of a CEO running a big event like the Wolf Summit, I bet things were not decided like that, right? Like there was a lot of planning and research done. So can you try to enlighten me a little bit in terms of how you built such a great team, in terms of the insights you had and the vision that you guys had from 2019 or even before that?
Yeah, sure, Adizio. So I'd like to say, first of all, I think a big part of the reason that we've managed to get through COVID and the difficult, circumstances is due to the fact that, the majority of our team are based in Wrocław. For us, it's like a nucleus of the company, and, our colleagues from Warsaw, Budapest or London that come over, I make a habit of making sure that we get together at least once a month. We have a great office in a shared co-working space. So for me, it's tremendously important. I'm quite skeptical about, whether we would have been able to achieve what we have 100% remotely. I mean, Slack's fantastic, and, obviously Google Drive and Google Docs, but I can't help believe that, having that face-to-face physical connection in the team is just so important for the health and the culture of a company. So that would be my...
And the last 2 years, let's admit it, they were insane, right? It's like we've been talking, there's one thing great about this event here, which is about the convergence, right? So of the minds, of technology, of the topics that you're talking about. But when I hear the comments about the Davos meetings, there's a talk about the convergence of calamities, like that we're there are a lot of things happening right now in the world that are plain wrong. There's a lot of instability, and when I look back 2 years, I mean, before COVID started, it was like something like in February, I was running a program of one of the companies I've been working for, and there was this great plan. We've been doing our homework, we did our research, we set the milestone and say, let's do it, yeah? What can go wrong, yeah? And then after 1 month, COVID, yeah, ta-da. And then we had to adjust all the strategy to become digital, yeah? And this is also some great thing that you guys did here at the event, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was, again, we were thrown into the fire, in some ways, and it was very much sink or swim, and we, thankfully we managed to swim. And, at that point in my life, I assumed that I'd worked with some of the most resilient people in the world, through my history in the oil and gas and, saturation diving. But what really surprised me is, some of the younger members of our team, students and, also the, mothers of 2 children and etc. It was just the tenacity that, they've all displayed over the last 2 years was astounding. And it was really heartwarming to see. And it just shows, when the chips are down, you could be surprised just what can be achieved with a driven team that's like got a common purpose, low ego. Everybody's going to have disagreements now and then, but when you get behind the common goal, it's so satisfying to see that come together.
And people feel that they are included, right? So that they give the best, right? Because they feel part of something bigger. All right, so let me go to the next question. I would like to ask Ruja about some psychological and data-based insights. I know you have been sharing already some of your findings, but I would love to hear more about that if you don't mind.
Sure. As I said, we discussed previously, our backgrounds and what are we bringing to the discussion, and that's absolutely great. That also this panel is pretty diversified. What I really like. From my point of view, I'm psychologist from my first education line. So I've spent 10 years on studying psychology, 5 years on master's degree, and after that on PhD. And that's the way how I think about data. So if of course we are having many examples of incidents which we are giving as an example, right? So we say okay, that's how it works because my friend is doing that. So we know that it's of course close to us, from emotional point of view and cognitive point of view, but that's the wrongest way we can go to. And especially when it comes to the team building and diversity in a team, and coming back to data itself, as I said, efficiency in diverse teams is much higher. From depending on what we measure, but between 15% up to 30% even. And of course, as I said, basically I'm using the data from Big Four, but they are using different measures to show that no matter if you are building team of people of different color or gender or origins or roots or backgrounds or education, etc. That's of course the thing which differs. But there's no chance that team which is different and bringing to the table, especially to the highest level decision table, different backgrounds lose with the team which is built of people exactly the same. Even today morning, I was having a super nice meeting with one of our customers, and that's what he said exactly. They are super successful startup after round B, one of the highest rounds in Europe, and that's what he said. We are having 3 people in management board, 3 people grown in the same city, going to the same school and university, same color, same age, same status. We are having one person which is different, living in a different country. So the last person who is missing, who we are looking for now, must be woman, must be different, must be based in different country, etc. So like people feel that they miss something, and I think like it's following the data is one thing, but also that the gut we have that like something is missing here. Maybe I don't see everything. It's like combining of these two things is like super useful, I think.
All right, thank you. And I would like to propose one thing, yeah, because we're soon approaching the end of our panel. I would like to open the floor for questions in the end. But while talking to our panelists here, I think the final question for today, and I would like to get started with Mike, would you like to share some final words, some key takeaways for the people that are watching us here and online in terms of diversity?
So, you know, in terms of our company at Wolf Summit, I'd have to look at the numbers exactly, but it's around 65–70% of our team are female, and I really feel that it's such a great balance between men and women in the team that it's it's part of our strength as a company. So, you know, however quickly we scale or which direction we go, I think this, you know, I'll personally try and observe that type of balance. I think when you refer to the, you know, demographics, etc., I think it's, you know, it's all too easy now to give a label, you know, to different statistics and, you know, blindly observe that, okay, we need X, Y, Z number of, you know, individuals from this, you know, particular demographic. But I personally feel that, you know, it's better to remove labels and just take, you know, individuals as a human and then base decisions based on that.
Terrific. And Róża?
Yeah, like I can refer to what you said. Like in the past, before I started to work with startups, I was working with one company which was having like KPIs on diversity hires, and I have never seen the company where it works well. Like the effect is always the opposite. Like when you are forcing for diversity and you are giving like HR the KPIs of hiring people of color, different genders,
right?
Yeah, you will always fail. Like it's about mindset, and it's about, you know, showing the options and like, you know, building that need in people, as you say, like hiring humans for the roles and like, you know, like feeling that need, but there's no like, you know, KPI you need to hit. So like I definitely agree. And what I wanted to say to wrap from my side is like my understanding of working for startups and in general like managing the team and leading the team is the solving problems approach. So like I usually invite my founders and invite our customers and our leaders to face the problems and like to get used to them. So like, you know, choosing the more difficult path is usually like, you know, quite okay option. So like not to be, I think it's like super crucial when you are building your company or when you are a leader, manager, like, you know, having that type of responsibility, like that your job is solving problems and like being okay with difficulties, being okay with, you know, difficult solutions. I think it's like super important to share.
That's awesome.
For me.
All right, so here we are. We're at the end of our panel. I would like to ask if we would have some questions from anyone over there.
Thank you very much. I am inclined to play devil's advocate here. The focus of this summit is startups. Do you believe that there is a stage of a company where too much of diverse thinking could be a hindrance rather than a benefit? And I'll elaborate further. As a venture capital investor, one of the critical questions which we usually ask, is how long the team has been together. And often, the founders and their passion is what is driving the momentum and the growth of the company. If you have too many diverse opinions, like a true democracy, essentially you're taking one step forward, 5 steps back. So my question to you, for a startup, would you advise them to emphasize on diversity, or is there a stage of growth where it makes more sense? Thank you.
I can start answering with pleasure. I totally understand what you get. And I also have such startups which are blocked by discussing, referring to discussions, not making decision because of the fact that they discuss the previous discussions. So like that's the huge problem of having team where people are not the same, they don't agree with each other. And like my final measure, and like even in like last 2 quarters, we were having like exactly 2 startups like that. And our final measure, just, you know, as a people who are coming from outside and say like, okay, like this, we decide and we are building framework in time and the number of stages you are making the decision. Because it's like absolutely okay to invite people to, you know, get their input. But you need to describe in how many steps, for example, CEO or the leader is making the decision. Because listening to people is not always following for what they say. Like, and that's the same exactly in my team. Like, my partners are usually disagree with what I say. But finally I say, okay, like, I hear you, my decision is different. Because like, I'm driven by this and this. And like, you know, like, if we are transparent, like, on when we cut off the discussions, and if we are doing it like in 2 stages or 1 stage, or it needs like, you know, 2 days or 3 days or 1 week to make a decision, like, yeah, that's these two measures we've implemented in such cases. So like, for me, fast-paced and like, you know, not being blocked by decisions and discussions is like a crucial thing. So if we have this time frame and if we have this, these stages, how quickly we are able to move to make a decision, like, we are there.
Yeah, and just to add to Roger's comments, I think it's very accurate what you've mentioned. Sorry, I can't see you in the crowd, but I like to call it too many shiny things syndrome. And I think a lot of startups suffer from this. And it's, you know, from my perspective, you know, it should purely be at the ideation phase when everybody has the crazy ideas, and then, you know, a group decision or whichever way the consensus is reached. There's a decision is made, and then the team pursue that objective, because we've suffered it from this ourselves. And when you have too many plates spinning at the same time, and in our case it was due to necessity because of the circumstances, but it wasn't the optimum approach. Whereas when you really step back and then focus on a couple of like key efforts, then things go much better from my perspective.
All right, thank you. Next question, please.
Mike, well done, and the team at Wolf Summit, well done surviving through COVID. I'm sure that was really freaking tricky for all big and small event organizers out there. I'm wondering, what's your vision now that we're back on track, we're all here to support you guys? What is going to happen for Pirate Summit next 5 to 10 years?
So, obviously I mentioned Wolf Summit Pluto edition, but that's probably 20 years ahead. So in the near future, as you may have heard, we're looking to have our first event in Vienna later this year in October. And then many of you will have seen the Wolf's X station that's on the other side of the building of here. So Diana and Greg, you can find them stationed there most of the day tomorrow through till Friday. And this is a really exciting new business line for us. So, just previous to this, we're working with PwC on their climate tech report and the pitching track, as well as LG, and we assisted LG Europe with their Global Innovation Challenge in the future of home. So this is a business line that we're going to actively promote and pursue because it's very exciting for us, and from our perspective, it opens up a whole plethora of opportunities that we hadn't seen before.
Next question.
Hello, guys. First, I'd like to thank you all for coming here and having this discussion on a quite interesting topic. I have a few questions. First one is, what are the signs or characteristics of an applicant that give him or her away during an interview or in CV? Second is, you mentioned that one cannot build a company on stars. Does it mean that CEO should be the only star in the company? And if yes, how does it feel to be a star?
Got it. I hate that type of answer, but I need to use it. Like, it depends. Sorry for starting from that, but definitely, if we are selecting people at the first stage, so we are looking at their resume and they are just, the only thing we have is just their LinkedIn profile or the CV. Like, just a side note, if you are applying anywhere, you need to have your LinkedIn prepared. Like, currently, like almost all recruiters who are hiring for startups, tech positions, like it's even up to 85% of looking at the applications. It's much easier for a recruiter to see the LinkedIn. So most of them are just, not reading your CV at all, but switching to the LinkedIn. So that's the first thing you should do if you are applying. The second thing, like especially for startups, we are looking for, it's like additional things which were done. Like, of course, like there are many options, many ways you can go, like depending on the role you are applying. Is it like a lead role or not lead? Is it like a senior one? Or like, I cannot, focus on everything right now, but mainly when we are hiring for startups, we are looking for, especially at the very first stage, so before we go to conversations, because it's like a different thing. We can talk about after the meeting, but the first thing, it's like additional things you've been doing. So like, was like only studying, and what else you can say about things you've been doing. Like, it's not only that the name of the position and the list of responsibilities, what you brought to the company, what you win, what were your wins when you say like, okay, enough is enough, why you are leaving. It's very unpopular in CVs for startups, but the motivation, like what really am I looking for? It is super interesting, especially that we are, skipping cover letters right now in recruitment. So your motivations for leaving the places you've been previously, and your motivation for finding a job, and it cannot be like, piece of nothing, like saying like, oh, I'm motivated by interesting job and I'm looking for a nice place to be. No, like all these things like dynamic team, fast growth are absolutely forbidden. Like, try to be really true on what you say, and like say something. It's not about being original, but it's like really about sharing your true motivation, not, sneaky peeky things.
And if I can add something, it's something about purpose. Coming from my own experience, and I have also colleagues which are on HR, and that's what they always tell me. And the thing that you mentioned about stars, I think companies, startups, they're more and more interested about team players, not stars. And if you think about CEOs, that okay, they are maybe high on the pyramid, but it needs to be a big team player, like so to a person who's actually taking care of the teams, making sure that everybody feels included. And I don't know if you guys would like to expand a little bit more on that, but at least that's my take on that. Mike?
Yeah, I just always call back to the great adage about, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And, I've worked with some exceptional stars throughout my life. And the ones that have stayed the course are the ones that have always been aware that it's always a distinct possibility of falling back to earth.
Yeah, and like the one thing which is like super important about hiring stars are not scalable. Like when we are talking about building the company and you are having 2 stars, the only thing you need to take from them is the way to standardize it. It's the way to universalize it. That's the only way how it can be really useful to have a star, like to make it a standard, to upgrade, and to make other team members grow, not to leave them shining alone, because like succession is very hard in that situation, and if you scale the team, succession is like absolutely crucial thing.
Guys, we got 4 minutes to go. Time for one last question.
Thank you. In the US, 1/3 of the workforce are actually freelancers. And in Europe, it's around 1/5. So we can assume that between 30% or 20%, right, of the effort in a company today is actually being fulfilled by a freelancer, an independent worker that comes as a contractor, that is temporary, independent. How would you implement this kind of mindset when you are, and how much effort would you put into as well making sure that you are hiding diversity in your contractors and in a different, maybe more flexible working arrangements rather than an employee that maybe if you're going to work with someone for 3 months, you don't do this huge recruitment or analysis. So how would you implement or add this for, contractors and freelancers?
What you are saying is super interesting, and it's part of like a bigger trend. The trend is that people now will be more and more hired for the job done and for the tasks done, not for being like, fully available. So we are switching from that model of, we call it like FTEs model, so full-time employees. It's not like a payroll list. It's like the list of things you've done. So like we've seen it like in the pandemic, like that managers were proven by those people that they don't need to be observed to work well. So it's more and more about managing people in the way when they are free, they are not limited like by working from 9 to 5 or whatever, any frames or time frames, but just being like scored, judged, like, marked for the things they do. And like, especially, like, I think it's also about the diversity, because like the fact that someone is not behaving in a way I like, it's like, it's just a bias. I can like someone more or I can like someone less, which is like part of FTE culture. And we are switching from that. And we are like, we are moving to the crypto world as well. So we will be, in 5 years, in 10 years, we'll be working with people we even don't know. Of course, like I totally agree with Michael that like a real contact, it's super important. And for me, it's impossible to work like fully remotely with my team, for example. But more and more part and more tasks will be done and outsourced to the people who are able to work like that. So it is opening our eyes to diversity in that way, that if someone is able to give you like a real value, not spend whole time in the office, just spending time on working, but really delivering. That's the chance for diversity as well, I think.
All right, so we must end now our panel. I would like to ask you guys a round of applause to our panelists, Róża Szafranek and Mike Chaffee. Yeah? And please feel free to catch up with any of us after the session, and thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elysia. Thanks.